we're now joined by political analyst, Professor Dirk Kotzé. Prof, always good to speak to you. Now, as a political analyst, how do you interpret the recent events involving Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula and their potential impact on the integrity of the ANC, particularly in the build-up to elections, which are only a few weeks away?
Yes, I think the matter that you are referring to, and that is about corruption and fraud and unethical conduct, has become a very difficult issue for the ANC to deal with. And that started with the Zondo Commission, I would say, to a large extent, and the pressure from the public and from the opposition parties in order to implement it, to see some concrete results as an outcome of the Zondo Commission. And I think the ANC, to a large extent, have been in a very difficult situation because they essentially had to act against their own persons, their own leaders, their own senior people from the ANC. And that creates an internal contradiction which is very difficult to resolve. So what we are seeing now is in a sense that the speaker has become, well, it seems like there's a lot of evidence or accusations against her. At the same time, she had, even before this became sort of public now, this latest, she was not anymore on the ANC's list, candidates list for this election. So it appears as if she is retiring or was retiring, or was convinced not to stand again as a candidate. But as a result of that, she is in a sense now the one on which the focus is concentrated, of how the ANC, I think, wants to demonstrate to the public in the run-up to the election that they are indeed serious to deal with persons from within the ANC who are accused of these things. So it is, in a sense, not yet some of the other very important persons that, under ministers, for example, some of them who are in cabinet, who are also mentioned in the Zondo Commission, that they are in the pipeline now. But I think this, therefore, is for me an indication by the ANC that they are, if these processes are unfolding, they are not actively pursuing it, but they are not going to prevent that from happening. They are not protecting her in public. They haven't done that so far. In the past, with other senior members of the ANC, we have seen all sorts of footwork that they've done, sort of strategizing in order to try to get the person out of those positions. In this case, they haven't done it. So one should, I think from my point of view, one should interpret it is that the ANC has consciously taken a decision that they will let this one go as a demonstration for the public of where they stand.
Well, that almost assumes that the public is stupid, doesn't it? Because if you've stated that Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula was not in the ANC list for those that were running for office, so she wasn't going to be voted for. She's probably was going to be a non-active member, if at all, post this particular election. Why would we assume that the ANC would use this particular incident to sanitize the ANC, for want of a better description, if we're fully aware that she was not a part of the plan?
Well, we cannot ignore the fact that she is, or has been now, a very important senior person of the ANC. To be speaker is, I think, around about the third position on the protocol list of the Republic of South Africa. Her husband was a minister. He was the General Secretary of the Communist Party, the national chairperson of the Communist Party. So this is not a very ordinary person. It's someone who is part of a very senior family in the ANC, who played quite a substantial role also in that. The mere fact that she became the speaker means that, again, she was regarded as an important person. So I think the fact that this has happened with her and the way in which the ANC responds to this is certainly an indication that she's different from an ordinary member of parliament. There's no way in which we can compare those. And therefore, despite I would say, the disbelief of the public, or being difficult for the public to believe that this is really a genuine case, I think over time we will possibly have to accept that it is so. It will also depend, or we will see to what extent there's going to be public ANC support for her during her trial. We know that, for example, in the case of President Zuma, the National Executive Committee of the ANC and the leadership instructed the members of the ANC not to support him at the court. It will be interesting to see what is going to happen in this particular case, if there will be public ANC support for her or not. And that will give us an indication of to what extent the ANC is distancing itself from her, or whether this decision was something which tried to make a particular impact at quite a critical time now. We are entering really into the core of the election campaign now.
Professor Kotze, herein lies the irony, right? You've indicated that she's holds one of the highest offices in the ANC, so you would expect her to be protected by the same party, because there are many individuals of lesser standing, if you will, in the ANC who've been accused of a number of crimes but are still standing. Now, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula has gone and accused Chief Whip via her lawyer, Chief Whip Pemi Majordina, that she has orchestrated her political downfall. What do we read into those allegations?
Well, I think what we are going to see is that because there is now, at least from the outside, the impression that the ANC is not going to protect her in a serious way or very overt way, I think she feels now very much on her own. I don't think this is an orchestrated, sort of agreed process that is unfolding now. I think in the case of the ANC, they have now decided not to support her in an overt, visible way. So she's on her own. Parliament also indicated that they will not contribute to her legal costs. So in that sense, she is very much on her own. Now, initially, I think what we saw is that it was sort of the early stages of almost going into the Stalingrad approach that President Zuma and others were used. But it can only work if you don't have to pay yourself your legal fees. So I think what Ms. Mapisa-Nqakula now realizes is that she is in a very tight spot. And therefore she's going to fight back as much as possible in order to, first of all, justify herself. And at the same time, it's inevitable that she's going to cross swords with the ANC at some point. I think it's almost impossible to avoid that. And these might be the first signs or steps in that process. But it will become, I would say, ultimately, I expect it's going to be a very dirty struggle between her and the ANC.
Well, the ANC obviously has its own internal processes. It has the Integrity Commission, the National Disciplinary Committee. How do you anticipate them handling this issue? Now, I'd imagine that much of this is unlikely to take place prior to May 29th, so it won't be messy and won't drag the ANC through the mud, and is likely only to happen post the elections, if it does happen.
Yes, I would guess so. You know, the role of the Integrity Commission is in a sense not so relevant for her anymore, because she resigned from her position. She has no positions in the ANC, so stepping aside for her there is actually nothing to step aside from, because she is not anymore the speaker. She is not one of the top 7 of the ANC. She is not in a senior ANC, let's say, provincial leadership position. So there's actually not anything to step aside from, but in theory, at least, it means that she might step aside from and not participate in any of the main ANC events or meetings of the National Executive Committee and so on. So in that sense, doesn't have the same impact as, let's say, someone like Ace Magashule, who had to step aside and then refused and then ultimately was suspended and expelled from the ANC. So I don't therefore expect anything in the same vein as what we've seen there. But I think what is going to be, it's going to be public accusations. It's going to be saying I acted on behalf of the ANC. I served the interest of the ANC by, for example, taking a delegation to Harare with an Air Force aeroplane, and now you are marginalizing me. You are pushing me to the margins, and not supporting me.
So when we take a look at the courts of public opinion, where does this leave the ANC a few weeks before the election? Will it serve the purpose, as you might have suggested earlier, that the ANC will be perceived to be doing right by the people of South Africa because they have sidelined the former speaker, or is it a case of there go the ANC again being corrupt in office?
Well, I think, this comes at a very late stage for the ANC. If it happened earlier, I think the impact could have been more. And it could have been sort of being divorced from the elections. But it's very difficult now not for the public to see this as something which is linked to the ANC's election strategy. And therefore it might be regarded not as genuine, as in the same vein as when it happens outside the context like this. One incident or one step that's been taken is not going to change, I would say, the public opinion in a very dramatic way. It might be on the fringes that some people will say, well, this might be the beginning of change. But I think there's the level of the trust deficit that exists in public is so much that it will require much more before there can be a complete turnaround. It can, as I said, create doubts in the mind of some people to say, well, this might be something that I have to take into account. But in general, for the public in general, I think it's one such, well, although it is an important development, it's not going to change their minds in terms of the overall election scenarios that were unfolding, because this competes against issues like, for example, people's experience about load shedding, about infrastructural problems, about service delivery matters, and so on. And then the question is, how important is this in comparison with those issues which will become or are very important electoral matters also?
Professor, always great speaking to you. Appreciate your analysis this evening.